Yeah, so before we start, oh, hello, Chance. Do you have any questions that like uh about the format or I usually
Oh,
just kind of ramble and see what
that's what
happens.
I figured.
Yeah, so we can talk about anything. There's really no limits. There is only one thing that I don't talk about.
Is this like a Rachel Maddow interview, or are we going full Tucker Carlson here?
Full
You know,
title. Yeah.
so Tucker Carlson's like home meals.
No,
It's
the only
like
thing we that I don't want people to talk about on this show is magnets.
magnets because how do they work?
Yeah, you don't. We just don't.
This is the show that's never about magnets. We talk about stuff, but never about magnets. A pretty good show, and also fuck magnets. This is the show.
So this is Myles Lawrence, super cool guy. Um, you've played with the Strike. You've been doing jazz forever. You've got a new project called Anchorage coming up. You're a multi-generational saxophone genius. Are you? Is that fair to say? Or
I mean, multi-generational saxophones in there somewhere. I don't know if I'm a genius, but
okay.
I play it. You know,
So
so
I've followed your work for a long time, and you're like when I think of like a good musician, you're kind of like the person that comes to my mind. Because you're one of these guys that's always been just working at music. You went to school for music. You've done the whole gamut. Playing big shows, playing small shows, like studio
playing
work,
clarinet.
teaching. Yeah, doing clarinet.
Which anyone struggling in the ladies department, clarinet is the way to get them.
Is that the way you get the ladies? My first instrument was harmonica, which is not the way to get the girls.
Yeah, harmonica turns out is like a pocket-sized clarinet. So
Okay.
as far as the ladies are concerned, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. You might find someone with a like Squidward fetish that
A
is.
Squidward. Did Squidward
I mean,
play?
this is pretty early in the interview to start getting into Squidward fetishes, but you know.
Oh, that was pretty much the whole top. That's what I had planned. You know. So
Okay, well, you've come to the right place.
excellent, fantastic. Squidward fetishists, shout out. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're into that Squidward stuff. So, all right. So maybe um, when so first of all, thank you for inviting me to your wedding.
Oh,
That was
dude, absolutely, man. Thanks for coming.
super cool. But one of the things that was really interesting was is the first time I met your dad,
Mm.
and I knew it was him because he was kicking ass on the saxophone in the band, um, and it kind of made me think like, okay, what saxophone has to be kind of more than just an instrument for you. It's gotta have all kinds of like symbolic meaning. Um, and I don't know, is that true? Is it just
Yeah, I mean, maybe like it's hard to say because it's just something I grew up with. Like my dad plays clarinet, saxophone, flute.
Mhm.
I've kind of been around it a long time. Most kids, I guess nowadays they grow up listening to Baby Shark and watching YouTube videos. I grew up, listening to, my CD collection included everything from like Gustav Holst to Anthony Braxton or Ornette Coleman or like the Beach Boys. Like I kind of ran the
Yeah.
entire gamut, and I
Yeah, yeah.
think that's, because of my dad, definitely like I got exposed to everything because he was
Hmm.
playing everything all the time. And then, what he was into, he's into some avant-garde stuff. And that was just normal to me. So,
Right.
I bet if I sat down with a therapist,
This is crazy. You're being crazy.
they would agree with you by the end of an hour,
Would the
as far as
saxophone?
symbolism, yeah. So
It's in my dreams and my nightmares.
yeah.
That's cool. Was it a way that you connected with family when you were young? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because the reason why I started playing was because my brother played clarinet, my dad did as well, and so I wanted to play an instrument too. And so I started when I was 6 years old, and I was so small that I had to play an E-flat clarinet, which is smaller than a regular clarinet. Not quite pocket size like the harmonica, but getting there. And it's so I had to play this little clarinet. It's probably about this long, So, and so I did that, and then I had to take some months off because I lost my front teeth. But that was definitely, yeah.
Is that the longest break you've had in music?
Yeah, I mean, like growing up when we did, I guess you could count some, like when the expansion of Diablo 2 came out.
Right.
But I was always playing at school and stuff.
Yeah, man.
So.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty amazing. So I remember when we were growing up, I always knew you as like a jazz guy. But I feel like a lot of your body of work is kind of more like horn rock and like funk and like actually pretty hard stuff, actually. I mean, for things with horn sections, pretty hard. Unless you're talking about guar, right?
Yeah,
I guess that's the hardest.
Yeah, I don't know if guar's quite the hardest. Behemoth is out there. Some other bands I like to play with, but I think you could say that like the Anchorage, not quite a new project. I'm newer in the band. They've been around for about 10 years now, but it's kind of a whole blend of a bunch of genres. And definitely like heavier music plays into that. And we have a new album coming out that you'll definitely hear that. And cool. I think what allows that is saxophone's kind of a chameleon instrument anyways. It's pretty pervasive in American culture. It like every like 4 or 5 years, there's like 3 songs that just pop out of nowhere that have saxophone all over it. And, there's a...
Oh, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. There was like, for example, like last year, there was one of the songs off the Blinding Lights album, had saxophone on it. It was one of the earlier singles that he released. I remember it like kind of being played everywhere for like a month or so. And then, the really big tunes off the album came up after that. So I think with that, it allows you to fit into a lot of different genres, a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different bands. If they really want to do something special, they'll add a horn section. So as a saxophonist, you have to be able to play, literally everything, because you need to know classical to teach your students. You need to play jazz because that's the basis of saxophone music. And, you need to be able to play funk and rock and know how to maneuver through all of those because they're all a bit different, You don't want to show up to like a funk gig and play nothing but jazz licks. It's not the best sound. You can get away with it, but it doesn't really sound like you know what you're doing.
That makes sense. Just as you were talking there, I pulled this up because it's so related to what you were saying. Have you heard of the band M83?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Midnight City?
Midnight City, yeah. I was going to say, I was listening to that before this interview, and I actually didn't realize that was a saxophone because it was just so, and I was listening, wait, that is a saxophone, and it really is everywhere. Yeah. In places you wouldn't think, and that's like a synthwave project.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a cool band in synthwave or outrun, whatever you want to call it. They're called the Midnight, and they feature saxophone pretty heavily. So it's a couple, I think, of music producers out of LA, and then either one of them plays or they have a friend that plays and tours with them. But yeah, that band's awesome. So if you like Midnight City, check out the Midnight, because pretty much if you listen to their albums, at least a third of them are going to have ripping sax on it.
Cool,
So,
man. Yeah. That's I was listening to a bunch of sax stuff, before we got on the call, and I was going through some of the old stuff you did with the Strike, and I was checking out the Anchorage. It's really good stuff, man.
Well, thank you.
So for the Strike was Cherry Bomb? Atom Bomb.
Cherry Bomb is the Runaways. It's about Jailbait, I think.
You're right. You're right. That isn't Atom Bomb.
I think Harvey Weinstein co-produced or something. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. So Atom Bomb. Yeah, that was that period of the Strikes time was very collaborative. So Chris, the singer, is the primary lyric and melody writer. Will come to the table with a lot of ideas too, but the Atom Bomb EP was really where everyone was kind of taking the bass ideas and really blowing them up. And I was talking about how saxophone has its root in jazz, like a horn rock band or something will have its root in jazz too, because if you listen to like old Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, basically any like horn rock band, arranging is such a massive part of what they do. And that comes out of like a jazz tradition. And so back in like, the 20s, 30s, 40s, you had people who were basically rock stars who were arrangers, and Quincy Jones got to start arranging, and he arranged for like Frank Sinatra. And so that was like a big part of what set you apart as a band. Like you might take the same song that's written by George and Ira Gershwin and then arrange it. So like the Duke Ellington band might have their version and the Count Basie band might have their version.
Okay.
And it's, so, and
interesting.
Like whether it's a hit or not, like lives and dies on the arranging, along with the playing of the band, right? You obviously had to execute.
Yeah.
Especially back then when they may have set up like 2 microphones for the whole big band, So, yeah.
That whole history is so interesting to me, especially the like war over loudness during that time.
Yeah,
where you get like cross-sectional voicing and all these techniques being developed and like and it's really cool stuff. It's stuff that I think we take for granted now, but it was like totally critical to like.
It's funny you mentioned cross-sectional voicing, because like as a horn player, increasingly with like younger producers and things, they're not, they don't know what they're doing with horns,
right,
more and more. So like I've used cross-sectional voicing to just make the horn sound bigger, because if you take that same part and then you flip parts, so rather than doubling your tracks, what you do is like if I'm playing with a trombone player, the trombone player and I might flip parts, and it will have a greater effect than just doubling. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take notes.
So yeah, all the Anchorage stuff that I played on, which is just the most recent EP that's on Spotify, and then the album that's coming out, we've done a lot of that. So, and that comes straight out of the playbook of like 1940s big bands.
Yeah. I noticed it because your horns sound huge in Anchorage.
Oh, thank you.
Like really big stuff. And like I don't know horn terminology. Is it vamping when you kind of like build the horn sound up into these like big crashing like crescendos?
Mm, no, maybe which song, do you know what song you're talking about particularly? Vamping is kind of like looping a part over and over again.
Right. Oh God. See, I'm showing the limits of my knowledge. You did it in, I think, Deep Sleep. What was the other one I was looking at? Where I Want to Be.
Okay. There's like kind of a stacking effect sometimes that we'll use it. You might be talking about that. That comes out of big band writing as well, typically a little later, like 1960s, 70s big band writing, where people call it stacking, or sometimes you hear the term like building a pyramid. And so, yeah, that can be a pretty cool effect, especially like if the band is on board with it, the producer's on board with it. You can do a lot of cool stuff with like panning, because the way those pyramids would be set up in a big band is like shooting across until you like hit the lead player on the last note. And the lead players typically in a big band will stand right in the center. Like the lead trumpet's the guy that's sitting in the center usually. Lead alto is usually sitting in the center. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially like when you consider the way concert halls are kind of designed. The center is where you're going to get the most amplification from the stage.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
I think it's more for a big band standpoint, because like a big band isn't really that big when you compare it with an orchestra. It's like 18 people versus like, anywhere from 40 to 80. It's more about just everyone being able to hear them. So being able to hear their phrasing and things and make sure everyone's lining up. So,
yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I'm always it's like any project you're part of, they're always so tight. Like you always end up working with such talented musicians.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Everyone, there's so much talent everywhere, man. So
it is a thing. It's a really good time to be a musician. It's also a really weird time. It's very difficult as well.
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like in the 60s and stuff, there were only a few guys that were like, guitar gods, or there was only like a handful of people that were reaching like the pinnacles. Maybe that's wrong, but
I
it
think
certainly feels that way.
I think for like rock music, that's true. Jazz stuff, like people were starting to hit that in the 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, you have like Charlie Christian. Django Reinhardt. That are doing unbelievable things on guitar in, the 30s and 40s. And obviously you have a lot of other jazz players in the 50s and 60s. Saxophone, kind of the golden age, I'd say, is 50s and 60s. But definitely like what we think of as guitar playing, shredding on guitar. I mean, it's like pretty much in its infancy. You got Jimi Hendrix. Jeff Beck. Clapton. They're just starting to pave that way of like a guitar virtuoso.
Right.
So.
Yeah. You've heard the story of Jimi Hendrix going to UK and playing there, right? Have you heard that?
Yes, of course. Like, so, because I mean, he was kind of like not really making it here in the U.S. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think any fault of his own, maybe racism, things like that, or reasons why. So he went over to the UK. There's way more doors open to him there.
Yeah.
So.
But like apparently when he showed up, like some of the people, some of the musicians had no idea who he was, and the other half were like huge fans. So I think it was the bass player from Yes tells this story where he went in there and he played this gig and it was like a madhouse. It was totally packed and he had no idea what was going on. And he looked out to play his first set and it was like the Beatles were there and Eric Clapton was there and like basically all of his heroes were in the front row. And he's like, what's going on, man? You know?
Well, 4 rows of about 15 seats in each. And as I'm testing my mic, I'm looking down, oh, it's Steve Winwood and Pete Townsend and Keith Richards. And is that George Harrison? Yeah, it is. You know, so all my heroes were like there, and we were like, oh, for our first song, you know, we'd like to do a cover of...
And I wonder if that could happen today. If you would have like, you know, the top musicians in like whatever the most popular genre is showing up at the front row to see the new like king of whatever instrument, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question. There's there's definitely some people innovating on their instruments. Like every instrument has some like god of the instrument right now, but they're basically just on like Instagram or something, you know?
Yeah.
They like release some video of them shredding every single day. I think the way music has gone is like popular music, at least. There's so much good music out there. And I think with how big the world is and how connected we are now, there's room for everything in an underground sense. But popular music is like so simplified now in comparison to music in the past, you know, and that's a general term, you know, but like when's the last time you have a top 10 hit that's got like an amazing solo on it? You know, it just doesn't happen. So
that's true. I feel like though that something I've noticed is that you know, there's different things that can be there's what am I trying to say here? You know, you've got your harmonies, your melodies, your rhythms, you've got, you know, lyrics, and then there's also timbre and texture, right? And I feel like timbre and texture is kind of in vogue right now. Like I feel like that's where a lot of innovation is happening, which might have to do with the technology. There's lots of sound design going on.
But there's also like, dude, there's a lot of stuff that's like sounds straight out of the box from Pro Tools that you hear like all the time on the radio. So but definitely I agree. That seems to be where the highest emphasis is. Like I have a lot of friends in the LA scene that are doing production and stuff like that. And they might kill on their instruments. And then it's like, they're so just like zeroed in on the sound. They're like just trying to get the right sounds for their recording and just simplify the rest of it as much as possible. And so, I think you're definitely right. It's become more complex in production techniques and a lot more complex in sound and timbre. To some degree, the like rhythmically from hip hop, but I feel like that's kind of gone away the last like 5-6 years.
Well, you know,
and keep in mind, I'm just strictly speaking like top 40 pop, you know?
Yeah. No,
like 5-6 years ago, I felt like there was this influence from hip hop that was starting to make music a little more interesting. As far as rhythm,
they were bringing swing back, man. Like there was actually, everything on the grid. But you know, there is a thing where, you know, when I was a kid, I grew up in a rock and roll house, and you know, I
Sorry, my camera keeps me. My dog is like charging into the stand.
Oh, that's all right, man. It sounds. I can hear him
He's
slobbering.
breathing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
I was gonna say that I grew up in a rock and roll house, and rock and roll was kind of this like rebellious thing that I understood, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got older, rock and roll kind of was like losing its soul. And
Yeah. Oh yeah.
so then I started breaking into warehouses and throwing raves with people, right?
Mm.
And rave music is like it's on the grid. It's you know, Spiral Tribe, when they were kind of innovating a lot of that four to the floor on the grid sound. They said when everything is loose, the funkiest thing is being stiff, you know. And like there's some truth to that. It's kind of like, for the counterculture to exist, there has to be the culture, and if the counterculture gets too popular, right, it's gonna fold over again.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to actually get around to like you know, using real instruments and exploring, you know, swing and these sounds again, because it was too like saturated. Yeah, so I guess that's a long way of me saying that don't worry, complicated music is coming back.
Yeah, you certainly hope so. And like, of course, you know, like I said, this is in regards to popular music. There's this thing that happens with where you look back at decades and you tend to remember, like, you know, you might remember a small segment of it and totally forget about everything else. Like, people love 60s music because they love the Beatles, right? But
Right.
go listen to the, if you like, go listen to the, like, the top of the charts for each year, and it's like,
Absolutely.
there's some mind-numbing garbage on it.
Hey, yeah! Where else here? You see that bullshit now, brother?
Oh yeah. That's really funny, actually, because people do say stuff like that a lot. Like, I say, "Oh, music isn't as good as it used to be."
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, you know,
Yeah,
you're
I
just
think
remembering.
The further removed you are from the decade, the more selective the music is that you're listening to. So like 90s music is just starting to come back, you know, the last few years. And it's like, it's interesting because a lot of like what I hear, like people who are like 20 listening to for 90s music is like not what you would think.
Oh, can't anybody see it? And complicated. I think I'm paranoid.
Is what's gonna last, you know. It's like, everybody dance now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just like, oh, okay, you went there. All right, not Alice in Chains, or, you know.
Oh, seriously?
Like,
I thought you were
yeah,
giving an example of things people are leaving behind.
no, I think, well, like, I think what it is it's still too close. You know, like,
Yeah.
when we were younger, I felt like 80s music was the worst because, like, what people were kind of into as far as 80s music was the equivalent of that. You know, with the exception of maybe, like, Michael Jackson's, like, Thriller and Bad album.
'Cause there's this dead night, and no one's gonna save you from the beast about to strike. I'm bad, come on, you know, and the whole world has to answer right now to tell you once again who's bad.
That were still kind of pervasive, but
Right.
people were still listening to a lot of 80s music that I just thought was the absolute worst.
It is
So-
funny because I remember in the 90s hating like the reverb heavy, like the like reverse reverb snares and the like compute, like the fake brass section sounds you get on keyboards. I hated
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And actually, it's funny you mentioned Michael Jackson, because he used a lot of like synthetic horns and all of these like textures that are like super 80s sounding. Do you
Like
know,
on which
do you know which?
recordings?
Let me see. I think he would use them as stabs and stuff. Like I think he did it in
Yeah.
Bad, right?
Yeah. I
You
thought
know,
maybe you were talking because there was some production stuff that ended up starting in Michael Jackson's time with horns, where they started making them sound more and more digital. Like the best example I can think of is "Higher Love" by Steve Winwood. If you hear listen, the horns on those are real horns,
no.
and they do not sound like real horns because, and it's like the players are crazy on that too. Like if you go look at the credits for that album
Yeah.
and see who's playing horns, it's like, I mean, Bob Mincer, who's like one of the saxophone gods, and so you know, he's the sax player on it, for example, and like everyone else on the recording is that same level. And I think the producer on it is Jerry Hay, as far as the horn arranging. And Jerry Hay is the guy that did like all of Quincy Jones's stuff and like all of Michael Jackson's stuff. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, I didn't know that. I always assumed all the 80s horn stuff was...
Yeah,
I mean,
well, some of it is. Some of it definitely is. And some of it's blended. But like then they started doing this thing where they were like using real horns for some reason and then trying to make them sound digital. And I think that's because it was like digital horns were just like this thing that was kind of in, like as a texture.
Yeah.
But they didn't want that sound. They wanted the effect of it, but without that sound. And you're so limited. That. Yeah, you're so limited with synthesizers making horns at that point. You know.
I mean, you know, when I do a lot of sound design stuff, I mean, I think I'm at the point now with sound design where I can kind of create any sound I want. It's just a matter of like the time it takes. Like my wife is an artist, and she says that for someone that understands drafting and art, like once you get to a certain level of like a photorealistic drawing isn't impressive. It just means that they just dumped thousands of hours into that, right? And it's the same with sound design. It's like, you know, so the benefit of having a real instrument, even if you want it to sound digital, is you don't have to program in all of the humanity and the swing and the pauses and the imperfections and you know
exactly.
What I mean? I spend a lot of time doing
that. So. That's what I think is probably, like you said, rock lost its soul and stuff. It's when
auto-tune.
Like auto-tune or beat detector, everything just becoming perfect. Like that's not what rock and roll is about. And
no.
So, and I think in a lot of ways, that's why I struggle to listen to full albums from a lot of artists. Like I might love songs here and there from people, but nowadays, if I put on one artist for a long time, it's like I get really sick of it. And I think it's because it's that lack of imperfection. Because that's the humanity in it. Like, I think, you know, I don't know, getting into like almost musical metaphysics or something, but
no,
like,
it's cool, man.
I think music is like inherently a spiritual thing that should be made by humans for humans. And like, I think when you stray too far into everything being programmed on the grid, you lose that, and definitely you get something in return. You know, it's like when you listen to like 90s dance music, like you were talking about earlier, like not like Everybody Dance Now, but like Prodigy. Something like that, like, you know, there's an edge and they're using that as a tool. But I think when it becomes so pervasive in music, you start to lose some of that spirituality. Like if you go look at like, you know, some pop productions of vocals, it's like you can see cuts on like words, you know, whereas Stevie Wonder, when he's sang, he would sing in one pass, or maybe they might make one cut for him, you know? So
I try not to, like, I don't auto-tune myself. I mean, I'm not saying I'm like a great singer, right? I think I'm passable. But it is a thing where, you know, it's a little bit like scary to when you live in the Instagram universe and everything is perfect, when, you know, when the average singer is only off by like 1 cent, you know, on a pitch.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, you know, it's a little bit scary to just say, I don't want to auto-tune anything I do.
Yeah, it's strange. I'm going to take a pause here for a second. My wife just got home, which means my dog's going to go ballistic. So I'm just shutting my door. So hopefully it doesn't interrupt too much.
Okay.
But yeah, like I think it's scary. The other thing that, you know, makes it challenging is the way that music's produced nowadays. Like we're doing this remotely. We live in different states, you know, so it's hard to like really replicate that because, you know, even though with the development of multi-tracking, you will get bands going in and layering and adding to it. They were very limited in how they could punch, how they could layer. You know, you had to kind of commit to a certain thing. And so normally what would happen is at least like the foundation of the track is all tracked together.
Yeah, like the drums, the bass, like rhythm guitars, like the whatever is driving it.
Yeah. And I think that's why like all that dance music from like the 70s and stuff, or like something like James Brown's I Feel Good still resonates with people today. It's because it's like, it's this thing that was happening right there. And you basically just set up mics and got an audio photograph or an audio video, you know, of, I guess that doesn't make sense, video.
No audio video?
Talkies have been around for a long time, you know, so, you know, long time since video was separated from audio, but,
no, I know what you mean. It's like certain microphones, they're recording. It's not like a photograph. It's more like an oil painting. And there's visual information that gets transmitted through music. Or I guess maybe my brain is just broken fundamentally or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah. No, I think it's true.
Yeah.
And I think good music is definitely activating the kind of visual parts of your brain. It's more than just that you're hearing sound. I mean, there's emotional information. And I was really feeling what you're saying about music being spiritual, because I've said this before, but for me, music it's almost like a meditation practice, or it's like a way to work through your problems and understand yourself or make fun of yourself. You know, and then you get to share it with people, and that's kind of that's a really cool thing about music.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. And, you know, I'm not saying that modern music doesn't have any of that in it, but it sure makes it hard when you're doing that many cuts. I mean, no one else is in the room. It's just you and a producer, maybe, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard to do that. And I think it's like on the opposite side of the spectrum, that's what people struggle with, I think, with jazz, is that it is so raw. Because jazz recordings, even to today, you know, are predominantly produced with everyone in the same room. Or like at least like they might be in isolation booths in the same studio playing at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, and so they're playing that, and a lot of people don't understand jazz until they see it live. And because just hearing it, it's hard to hear the musical communication that's going on, because the language is very very produced. The language has
Yeah.
like evolved a lot.
I have this memory of us being in a jazz club a long time ago, and it's funny. I think it was at Tula's.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and
That-
everyone was
probably,
sitting.
yeah.
Yeah, everyone was sitting there with red wine, and they were all kind of like sitting like this, you know. And you and I were at this table, just listening to the music and going like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were banging the table and stuff, and every time the musicians hit like a really crazy run or something, we'd be like, God damn,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's what jazz is, and I think people misunderstand it a lot. It's like good hip hop when someone has a good flow, or they have some fire lyrics, you know what I mean? And you hear it and it makes you make this face, like, you know what I mean? That's good music. And I think all music should do that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think, I definitely think with jazz, like people seeing it live, that's when they start to get it, you know, because if you have no exposure to it, if you didn't grow up listening to it, it's like gibberish to you. But just like with the communication we're having right now, you know, what's that stat that always gets thrown around where it's like 80 or 90% of communication is actually visual. And so like with jazz, like even though some players are a little more subdued in their movements, like you pick up so much more from watching them. And like,
right,
you can kind of hear it because it's like if you're playing and the drummer like makes an accent on the recording, you don't see anything. But if the drummer's playing and then they make this accent, like you see their hand like move, and like you can feel like a little more coming from that, you know. And I don't know, I think it's anyone out there that isn't understanding jazz, like just recommend go see some good live jazz, you know. If it's available where you live, just go out and see it, you know.
I was thinking about dancing just then, and it was making me wonder if that's why dance is getting really popular, like on TikTok and you know, stuff like that. Because one of the things dance does is it allows you to hear music more clearly. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's like by no accident did like bands tour with dancers and stuff like that, you know. So music videos, like how long was it before it was just like the bands in like a room shooting promo stuff to send to labels before they like had dancers and stuff on it? It's like 5 years, right? So
yeah, so I do want to talk a little bit about the track I had you play on. Yeah, so
sure.
What do you think of it?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Well, I thought like everything you do there, it starts with like a very creative element, right? So, you know, as you might call it in the classical music society, you had some music concrete going on where you've got the rain, the windshield wipers, like the sounds of the car as part of the track, which is really cool. Yeah. You know, it very directly takes you to a place. Yeah. And, you know, just like kind of your whole approach to music, like the whole time I've known you, you're always a little not, what's the word?
Good.
Like you just good. Use things. No. You use things differently than most people. You know what I mean? And so like that's automatically refreshing, you know, when I go to play on a track and it's, you know, something different from what I'm doing most days. You know, and so that was a lot of fun. Also, I liked your chord progression. You had a nice like modal interchange in there that's really fun to play around with. That allows for like some more exotic sounds as far as harmony.
Cool. Yeah, I really like mixing major and minors, and I really like ambiguous key centers, and I like doing all kinds of you know, cool sound design stuff. And in this, do you listen to ASMR?
Hello, friend. How are you doing today? How was your week? Perfect.
No, but I'm familiar with what it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah, shout out to ASMR.
yeah.
So
it goes along with the Squidward fetish, you know?
there
Yeah,
we go.
so-
You could look at a picture of Squidward while listening to like people eat sushi in your ear.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. It's a seafood theme, but so the idea there, I mean, the theory behind it is that people make emotional connections to sounds when they're young or at some point in their life, and then when you hear these sounds that are reproduced in like a realistic way, in an intimate way, where you get this, the really close to the mic, so you get all of the plosives and all of the sibilants, right? The idea is that your brain connects that to emotional, to memories, emotional memories that are hidden in your body, right? And it's like activating muscles and things, and that's what makes you tingle, right? And I think that every sound has some sort of like almost like platonic meaning behind it, right? Like the chair isn't just the chair. It's like it's also an object that exists in like our mental space. It's a part of our vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I like to blend sound design elements like that is that it's a really easy way to connect to people's like latent memories. It's just a very direct path to communicating to people. Do you see? Oh, which way am I going? This right here.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's Lil Mike, and Lil Mike is he's got face tattoos. He's a binaural dummy head that I made for this track.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, so what he does is, so when you hear the windshield wipers and all the car noises, I actually had him in the driver position, so you're getting a realistic recreation of the sounds as if you were in the driver's position.
I see.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Yes, I didn't know the full purpose of ASMR. Like, I was just aware of the girls on Twitch that do it, Well,
there.
It seems like a totally different purpose there. You're stimulating other muscles.
That's the funnel to the OnlyFans.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, if you like my ASMR, you'll love my other content.
So, yeah, that's cool. I guess, the idea of realistically recreating it. And the other thing that stuck out to me from that was you're talking about capturing all the plosives and things like that. That's definitely a huge trend you hear in pop music. Like,
Billie Eilish is all close mic.
I'm the bad guy.
Exactly. Like Billie Eilish or Olivia Rodrigo's like driver's license.
Oh, and I just can't imagine how you could be so okay.
Like very close mic, and then they raise that floor, the compression up so that like all of that is just like right in here. It drives me a little crazy because
you get all the spit noises.
Yeah, I have that thing where like if I hear people eating, like where it starts to make me mad. So
so that is an ASMR, like that's so man, why do I know so much about ASMR? So 70% of people have a reaction to sounds like this.
Yeah.
And I think half of them have positive ones and half have extremely negative ones.
Yeah.
So that's why people either think nothing about ASMR or they love it or they hate it. It's like a
So like when I've seen it, like the stuff like rubbing on the microphone and things like that, that doesn't bug me, But like the idea of someone eating sushi in my the idea of someone eating sushi in my ear would just like I go crazy. Like,
yeah.
like when I'm really tired and if I'm sitting down and eating cereal in the morning and I can hear that sound too clearly, I'm just like, I'm done. I like stop eating. It drives me crazy. But yeah, so sometimes in pop music, it drives me a little nuts because like you said, it's this direct communication. I'm like, I know exactly what they're doing, which is like just trying to manipulate people into like feeling, right? And
Yeah,
which I think that's all music, but
legit.
you know, so.
Yeah, but you know, I do like a lot of pop music. I like a lot of modern music. Some more than other things, right? I think I appreciate a lot of it from like a sound engineer point of view a lot of times too. Like if I don't like the content of a song, I'll be like, man, this is like some crazy sound design, or like, you know, those preamps were super clean. You know, I'm total like music like gear geek. But if someone produces a track, and I can tell, I can often tell if the purpose of the track, like the impetus, was to make money.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people sitting in a room and they're like, all right, guys, what's the next McDonald's cheeseburger we're gonna force down these people's throat?
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, okay, well, kids like S&M. Let's hint at that. And like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like it's a very forced thing, and you know, it that bothers me.
Yeah.
Whereas if yeah.
And I guess like, you know, I wasn't meaning to take a dump on any like any pop people like using using like that close mic technique and really getting all of that mouth noise in their vocals. It's probably I had that feeling because I had that negative response. So
yeah. No, that makes sense.
Because at the same point, like I love Driver's License. Like I thought there's some really cool things in the songwriting, in the production.
Wrote in that song about me.
Dan Negro, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. So he was part of a band called As Tall as Lions, which I was a fan of like years back. I always loved some of the stuff they were doing on their records. And it was funny because when I heard the first couple of Olivia Rodrigo songs that came off that album, I was like, man, I love this. Like the songwriting's good. And then I was like, and like, also I love some of the things that they did to break with, you know, musical norms that are happening as far as top 40 pop like that. But then I was sitting there and I was like, I really like the production on this. And after the second song, I was like, man, who did the production on this? And then I looked it up and I was like, awesome. Like, I'm really glad for him because his band, like, you know, they did all right, but I always felt like they were kind of like a little overlooked for their time and stuff. So when I saw, I was like, oh, he's got the biggest album on the planet right now. That's really cool. So.
Yeah. Maybe this is how I should have been recording it.
Hey, better late than never.
Well, you know, what is it, 40 minutes into the interview?
Yeah. So, just in time for the epilogue.
Yeah. Just now that we're wrapping it up, I've got the video where it needs to be. Well, it's okay.
I have to say the other thing that I love about you and your music is how tenacious you are. Like, you know, you've gone through like a lot of different transformations and things. And I think that like your life experience, your experience from a lot of different places shows up in your music, you know, because I was listening to the other track that you sent me a little preview of. And I was just like, this is really cool. Like, was
it a Creature's Words or?
Yeah, Clockwork Forest.
Oh, yeah, that's a really trippy one, man.
Yeah, and I just think that's it's pretty cool because knowing you, knowing like your background and stuff, it's like I can kind of hear where everything comes from, like trippy production to the like, you know, I guess the guitar on this song like almost reminds me of like your harmonica days, you know. So it's like, you know, you can hear your influences, and you're so tenacious at like pursuing music, and I just think that's awesome.
Thank you. Coming from you, that means a lot. Yeah.
Hey, well, sorry, text just came in about my gig, but
oh yeah, good. Congratulations. Having gigs is good.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well, no one got to do gigs for like what, a year and a half.
Depends where you live, you know.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
So down here, they opened up bars kind of at the worst possible time, like September of last year when they were, you know, peaking on the old COVID chart. Some really shady stuff going on. I won't name any of the institutions, but I did see some health inspectors walk in. It's like packed to capacity. There's live music. Everyone's dancing. No one's wearing masks. Health inspectors in the back for a while. Then they walk out and nothing changes. So they may have been getting a cut, you know. So.
You know the Doors, there was a Doors concert where it turned into a riot. Do you know this story?
I don't know it inside and out. I mean, I've heard that, but I don't really know the story.
You know the story that the fans at some point rushed on the stage and the stage collapsed, and the whole thing was like one of these giant stages that you kind of assemble. It's like a platform.
Yeah.
The whole thing was like caving in and collapsing. And as it was collapsing, the drummer just kept playing. He was just playing a drum solo as he was like collapsing into this pit of like broken wood and metal. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that's so rock and roll. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and so my point is that everyone packing a place to capacity during like a deadly pandemic. And and like dying while they're listening, that's very rock and roll, man.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it shows how important music is in society. You know, people are willing to risk their lives and their grandmas to go see it and to experience that whole release. You know, so
people need connection.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah. So I think you were saying you need to get going around this time, right?
Yeah, I do.
But, oh man.
Yeah.
It's so short. It was great talking. Do you want to give a shout out to all your stuff and where people can find you? And
Sure. Yeah. I mean, probably the best thing you can do is just check out the music on Spotify. Share it if you like it. The bands I'm playing with are the Anchorage, the Strike. And yeah, I don't really have any other projects going on right now, you know, outside of just working band stuff, but, yeah. So yeah, that's probably the best thing to do. I'm like the most silent person on social media. So my socials aren't really worth following unless you want the occasional picture of my dog or something, you know. So
I'm terrible at Instagram. By the way, my Instagram link is in the comments below. So if you want to see nothing for weeks and weeks and then a picture of my computer screen, please add me.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a great time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think there was like a brief time where I was, you know, trying to like be like, okay, I'm a musician, I have to have an Instagram, you know. And then it just slowly turned into like if I saw something really cool. And then it was like now it's pretty much just massive life moments. So like I think the most recent thing on my Instagram is my wedding. So
if I updated my Instagram regularly, if I was like, all right, I'm gonna like this is me, my musician life, it would literally just be this desk in this room filling with empty coffee cups and then them getting cleaned off like and repeat.
Dude, that's why the shredders do so well, you know, because at least it's a video with like a 15-second lick that just kills and then sign up.
Yeah. You know? I could do like a 1 hour video of me adjusting a compressor. Be like,
That would be
"God,
cool, you know.
It might, I've thought about that, like show people, like music production stuff. But I'm not trying to be like a music teacher. I'm trying to be an
Yeah.
artist,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that's a fine line to walk. But I don't
Yeah.
know, like leave a
Adding
comment.
the extra level of creating content on there is just more time to take away sometimes, you know.
I would rather talk to like artists that are walking on this path and like creating meaningful things, like people like you, and help promote you to people.
Oh, well, thank you.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's more interesting than being one of the 1,000 people teaching you how to adjust an EQ on a guitar. Like,
Yeah. I guess definitely the one thing I've considered doing as far as like on Insta or YouTube or something is maybe just doing like pedals through saxophone through pedals, because that's something I run live, and like I don't know, I've learned a lot that I think could help people. So I might do that in the future, you know.
How many pedals do you have, bro?
I have no idea, dude.
Really?
Like, I mean, less
that
than
bad?
I think it's less than 50, but I can't really say how much, you know. It's not like there's people out there that are a lot crazier. You know, I play saxophone, not guitar, so I don't have to worry so much about owning 30 overdrives, you know.
I thought you were gonna say like 3 or 4, and then my joke was gonna be, and you call yourself a guitar player, bro?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like I fiddle around on guitar, and in the Anchorage, like I'll play some stuff. So I have a basic setup for guitar there, you know, but
what are your band members' names and what do they play? Because they were all really good.
Okay, so Derek is the vocalist and guitarist. Jason is the drummer. Jake is the bass player. So Evan is the trombone player, and then Eric is who you've heard on trumpet, but on the new album that's coming out, Tyler is the trumpet player. So Eric had been with the band since the beginning, and he felt like it was his choice to leave. Like, he comes out to shows and stuff. We love him. You know.
Okay, cool.
Shout out to Eric if he's gonna see this. So, but
yeah.
Well,
I'll
so
put all of their stuff
they're awesome
in the comments.
Yeah,
they've got socials.
Yeah, I can send that over to you. So everything in that band is like really well thought out. I'd say they all have like good taste, you know, for what they're doing. So
I know we're trying to wrap it up, but one of the things to me that I love is when a musician comes and becomes a part of the song, instead of just like spreading whatever they're, like
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah,
drummers,
saxophonist,
a lot. Sax player. Well, any lead instrument is pretty guilty of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like saxophone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I said you'd be surprised. Like, I get a lot of work simply because I know how to like stop playing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know, it's like any poetry it's about the pauses between the words, right?
Yeah. Any aspiring saxophonist, like, learn when to shut up.
Yeah. Well, I think especially if you're playing like a really loud instrument, you know, you need to be able to pull it back too. Like,
I think part of the issue is it comes out of jazz, right? And you got a million things happening at a time. And so sax players, like, you tend to get really uncomfortable when you're first starting in pop, like having space. And because you're coming from the standpoint, a big band, or even going back to New Orleans jazz, where, you know, everyone filling in their space and weaving these lines together was a really important thing. And so it's just so not what you're doing when you're just starting out in pop music, transitioning from jazz, that like, you're like, the singer sings like half of a phrase and there's a space and you're like, I better fill here, you know? So
yeah.
But it's like you got to learn how to contextualize, and like that stuff is cool, especially towards the end of the song, maybe on the last chorus, the third or fourth chorus, because everyone's very familiar with what's happening, but you don't want to trample all over what's happening,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Completely.
yeah.
All right.
Go,
I
man.
will let you get some dinner, man.
All right. Sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
You have a good night, man. It's good talking to you.
Great to talk. Thank you so much, everybody. Myles Lawrence.
Thanks.
Take care, man.